Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and thank you so much for joining us for one of our talks today. I'm so thrilled today to be joined by the fantastic Bellamy Young, currently starring in the series Prodigal Son. And the first thing that I actually wanted to talk a little bit about is this idea of trauma and grief and loss that you bring into your portrayal of Jessica, because even though her husband didn't pass away, in essence, she lost her husband and she lost her entire life as she knew it. And so I was really interested in how you took this idea of traditional grief and thought about the way that it would have manifested in her internally.
Oh my goodness, Mara, what a lovely way to begin, just to honor I think people, first of all, hi, Mara. Thanks for these talks. They're always really cool. But just to honor the fact that, yes, Jessica's life sort of ended as she knew it in 1998 when they arrested her husband. And, she became a notorious woman and a pariah in her community. But for me, the grief is very concrete because it is the loss of those at least 23 lives, in our fictional narrative. I think for me, it's a very immediate guilt and horror to think that I, just by loving him and making a home and making a family, aided and abetted such monstrosity. And I think that because Jessica is not a sociopath, because their kids are not sociopaths, we think. I think that they very much carry that grief with them in every moment. So everything she's done is to keep her family together, keep her kids on track, watch her kids like a hawk to see if, nature, nurture, if any of it's going to manifest and how she's going to handle that. But I think she wouldn't have known how to atone for that, but also would never figure out how to escape from it.
And even within that, it feels like she probably never actually allowed herself to pause and take a moment to really process all of those emotions for herself, because we see that the way that she deals with setbacks and fallbacks is to turn it into some sort of action and motion and not to allow herself that stillness. And so within that, how do you pepper out through your performance and really think about the small spaces in which you're going to allow those internal cracks to the surface for her?
Well, I'm so gifted because our writers are terrific. So there's never anything that I need to really forcibly, muscularly inject. But, I don't know if you're a mom. I'm only a mom to furry people, but I have a lot of friends who are mothers, and mothers don't have time to stop and process for themselves and, really go away and go on a journey and make peace with things. They have to keep going, and they keep going for their kids. And so you're right. Jessica didn't miss a beat, not even the night she went to the police station to give her account of things. Like her, first and foremost, her focus has been on her children. So she has been in stride and vigilant since the moment this whole house of cards came down on her. And the thing I love most about life and my job right now is that, man, grief hits you when you just don't expect it. Your guard goes down for a second, or you let joy in. Oh, joy is so dangerous because joy is usually followed right on. If you're in any sort of situation, anything akin to the nightmare that Jessica is in, followed quickly on the heels of joy is the guilt and the horror and the just isolation. And so I think those are the moments. I think it's the absolute paradox of, in the moments of security, happiness, togetherness, family, possibility with Gil, and those sort of human, we might say normal moments, then she remembers she may be human, but she's not normal. And that's just a big hill to climb.
Well, to that point, I think one of the things that you do really fantastically with the humor, and we're seeing a little bit more of that light and levity in her this season as well, is to allow herself to go into those places, but then she always pulls herself back. And again, that restraint just comes forth. And I think that's where a lot of the comedy lies as well, in that she doesn't want to quite allow herself to give herself over to it. And again, is that something that really just comes from the writing, or do you find yourself playing around with the text and thinking about the dryness of what her humor is going to be in a moment?
I feel like from the moment I read the pilot, I could hear her. Like her cadence was so clear. Her, she's a little bilious. She's a little boozy. There was just an elan that I could feel the rhythm of. And that's been true every script I've gotten. But in much the same way, she's a mom first and foremost. So she doesn't have the luxury of indulging in these moments that pull her down, because she doesn't want to make her pain somebody else's pain. She just wants, they are her priority. And so laughter gets you through everything. So the moment she feels herself going down, 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 instead of trying to take everybody with her and just like having a whole, lay in, she picks up a martini and makes a joke and soldiers on. And I love that about her. Like, she knows she's the butt of the joke. She knows she's guilty for so many things, but she's never going to make it somebody else's problem.
Yeah. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about your work with Tom Payne, because I loved something that you said about how whenever you're doing scenes together, that he always has the backstory of his character and your character present within it. And so I just wanted to ask what that really looks like between the dance that the two of you are playing in scenes, in making sure that the backstory is really present, but that you're not being didactic in explaining it.
It's sort of funny because it feels rather seamless. I don't know how to articulate the structure of that. I'm just really fortunate because Tom is such a beautiful actor and such a responsible actor. He doesn't just sort of come in and breeze through and move out again. He's there with his whole truth in every moment. And again, not in a way that makes it your problem. He's just, that's the kind of actor he is. So, we had a crazy great scene last night till like 3 a.m. And, they call cut, and we're, he's British again, and we're like gossiping and it's all going on, but they call action, and you can feel it between us, the wanting to connect, but all just the horror in between, and the confusion, and the wanting to blame but not wanting to blame. And it just now is a very familiar tension that we can sort of tap into like that. But it took, in the beginning, just both of us really showing up with a sense of, I'll also give our writers another credit, because they set the framework up so nicely with the flashbacks. And the flashbacks always, when you look back in your life, any sort of hindsight always provides so much context for the moment that you're in. And so maybe it was that they trained us. They trained us to think that way. I could never not see 9-year-old Malcolm when I look at Tom. I could never not see little Ainsley when I look at my, grown-up journalist daughter. It's just always there.
And is that very similar as well in just it feeling very natural at this point in your scenes with Michael Sheen, because there's such a power dance between them in every single moment. And it feels like she has to go in there with a plan. She knows how she's going to extricate herself from the conversation. It feels like she's thought a little bit as well about, okay, these are some of the insults that I can potentially throw at him. Here's how I'm going to retain the power in this conversation.
I love their dynamic, because there's still so much chemistry there. It's very honest to me. We all have exes, and it is always there. What drew us together, So whenever I walk into his cell, or we have these like weird fantasy moments, or the flashbacks or whatever, it's just a delight. And like you say, there's the dance of, yes, we met, and Jessica was wealthy and powerful, and he was poor but brilliant, and so there was a little bit of that there. And then we find out he's a sociopath, and then this, so there's always been the seesaw. But what's most wonderful is that they're a terrific match. And so when they are together, it galvanizes both of them to kind of raise their game. He will always surprise her and she will always surprise him. And there'll always be a little bit of a spark, but a whole lot of horror. And again, it makes me really mourn for what, the life she thought she had. So it's delightful. And Michael, I mean, what a joy. What a masterclass. Tommy too. Like, I go to work and I feel like I have the joy of going to school. It really is like a playground. I watch those guys and I'm like, I see that. It's just beautiful.
And in going into the scenes where it is her walking into the cell with Martin, are you also kind of extricating everything that's gone into that emotional place that she needs to be able to put herself in for the moment that door swings open? Even just the way that she walks in physically holding herself at the beginning of any of those scenes is kind of like part of that mastery and that game that you were talking about with the power between them. But also, she has to kind of like emotionally set herself up before that door opens and before she sees his face.
I've talked a lot with Katie Riley, our incredible costume designer, about she has to put on her armor to go to that place. I mean, it's so out of her comfort zone anyway, just as a human, right? An Upper East Side human going to the penitentiary is like, bah. But also just to face him, because there's no way to wrap your mind around what he is, what he did, the carnage. There's no way to actually take it in. So I think the only way she can approach it is to poker face, arm up, gorgeous outfit, best makeup, best jewelry, like, best revenge is winning sort of attitude. And then when she gets in there, for it all to get like ravaged, like, she's fighting a panther and you can see the little flesh underneath when the tears come. It's just the best. It's the best.
I love that description of her costumes and outfits being very much an armor. And is that how you think about them throughout for her as a character? Because even when she's at home, having been quarantining through a pandemic, she's still dressed to the nines just to be sitting on the sofa having a conversation with her son. She's still wearing, full jewelry throughout her entire body as well. So do you think it's part of her armor every single moment of the day through those outfits?
I feel like it's part of her identity. Yeah. I think she armors up in a different way to go see. It's also like you want to look extra pretty for your ex, like you don't want to run into your ex when you're coming home from the gym. Like you want to run into your ex when you just came from the red carpet or something, right? But I think definitely it's part of her fight, right? It's part of her identity. It's who she was and what was taken from her. And yet in the face of that, who she chose to continue to be. And so it's like a giant fuck you, to her society world, to continue to chin up and look fabulous and live in the neighborhood. And, they would have much preferred her, once they turned their, cold shoulders, they would have much preferred her to slink away in shame and, I don't know, move to Tokyo or something. But no, she would never do that. The Miltons have been in that house, since they bought the island, basically. And she's a fighter. So it's her identity.
And obviously with this season, one of the big things that the entire family is dealing with is learning that Ainsley killed Endicott at the end of last season. And so for you playing Jessica, how have you really built that into her emotional fabric of what she's processing and what she's processing from her husband in the lead up to her starting to get paranoid and then figuring it out and then realizing that one of her worst fears is true. And also that she spent so much time concerned that her son might go that direction that she almost took her eye off the ball with her daughter as well.
Well, I think that is exactly her great guilt, is that she was so focused on Malcolm that, and her, Ainsley was the perfect child and didn't really require that much attention because she was always excelling and, wearing the right clothes and being polite and, going to the boarding school and learning all the things, she always did it all right. And so Jessica sort of thought, all right, well, that one's going to be fine. Let me focus on this, odd, depressed one. Let me see how I can help this one. And I love that it has absolutely pulled the rug out from under her. I mean, there's no there's no more wonderful place to be when you're acting than an utter free fall, and you just, it's funny because I watched, recently I watched your interview with Hugh Grant about the
Undoing.
Undoing, which I loved. Sorry for my old lady brain. I loved both the series and your conversation. And he was talking about juxtaposing working on TV and working on film, and how film you have, the beginning, middle, and end. You can prepare for it, and how it would have been it would have put him out to have done a TV show where he didn't know where it was going. And I totally get that. And I feel the opposite. Like it's always thrilling to me. I shouldn't say always, because I've only had the gift of having a great steady job twice. But in Scandal and Prodigal Son, I relish that I get to meet it like I meet life. Every day, every moment, we are all just doing our best, right? We're trying our best with what's going on. We don't have all the information. We don't know where the finish line is or if we'll make it there. And we don't know who we'll be to get there, or who we'll have to be to get there. And I love that. I love to be surprised by the scripts. I love for Jessica not to know where she is, because I feel like that's how you find things out about yourself. I've gotten to discover things with Jessica, and that's a treasure. So when you trust your writers, there are circumstances where that is not a treasure, but when you trust your writers, it's just the best feeling. And I feel like that is exactly where she is with Ainsley. Even now, like she just doesn't know where forward is, much less how to move there.
Yeah. But to that point, I think it's interesting that the way that you're describing loving that lingering sense of not knowing where things are going, because Scandal was very much somewhere where it sounded like a lot of times it would be like, okay, we just printed out this 3-page monologue and you're going to shoot it right now. So off you go. There's the camera. Have fun. Good luck with it. And then on this show, you actually get a little bit more information in advance or a few more scripts ahead sometimes. And so how has that really changed the way that you're able to work with the text and think about it differently?
Well, it's been interesting this year. You're very right about Scandal. I mean, the pages would be warm in your hand, like it got bananas. But we were all little theater children, and your little brain sponge soaks it up, and it's so well written that it goes into your marrow and then comes out on screen. So we loved every minute. None of us, all right, we complained a little, but we wouldn't actually complain. Prodigal Son has been different this year because our writers were able to write when we were all locked down. So we did come into the season with a little bit of a wider lens on the story and our character's part in it. But it always changes. It always changes because writers see things on screen that it becomes a germ of an idea that things go in an entirely different direction. The other thing that's been a little odd this year is, and I imagine, should we get the good fortune to continue, which I certainly hope we do, will continue to be so. Michael is a busy man, and so we need often to shoot many episodes out of sequence and at once, like cross-boarded, so that we can have like 2 weeks of Michael time and like do all of his stuff. So this year's challenge has been to keep the puzzle pieces in the right place, because too many puzzle pieces, you don't want to, that was my cat saying, you don't want to tip your hat and let anyone know where things are going, but you also don't want to drop any threads and not pull your emotional arc through the season. So that's been the challenge of this year.
And you yourself come from a theater background, and you've worked with so many actors in television who come from that background as well. And so I wanted to ask you about the rehearsal process, because, when everyone comes in having done their homework in that very specific way that you do with theater, and rehearsal is so much part of the process, it always sounds like everybody comes in and really utilizes the rehearsal process in a very different way when they come from a theater background. And so I wanted to ask for you what that looks like and what you really want to be focusing on when you do have the luxury of that on set.
It's so interesting, Mara, because it varies by director. So that is your crapshoot as a television actor, is you have to trust your director, because you can't have objectivity. You're in charge of your narrative, your life, bringing someone to life, and that's what you have to keep, your head down and going forward. So, how directors use rehearsal time is as different as there are people in the world. We usually we just say the scene once, with the actors gather. COVID has made it a little trickier too, because not so many people can be together at once, but we gather-ish. And we say the words out loud once, and then like the director we're working with now just starts giving us blocking. But there are also directors that honor process a little bit differently, and oh, what do you feel, how did you think, did you see yourself, I feel like I'd be pacing here because I've just come off this other scene, and blah blah blah. But usually your homework happens at home, and they start looking, they have an idea of the pictures they want in the scene, the shots, the camera work. They've done a shot list. They have an outsider's view. And as they begin to see it on film, if you're lucky, then they start tweaking the emotional story. But that's why you really are blessed when you have a responsible, talented cast, because it's the homework, man. You do your homework because there's no time on the day.
And then one of the things I think as a performer that you're really phenomenal at is the way that you utilize your voice and different intonations, and really like those moments where you command an entire room and an entire scene by reaching into the deeper notes of your voice, I think is such a skill set. And you do that in such different ways depending on the character. And so I actually wanted to ask you about whether that's a really conscious thing that you're thinking about, the different tones of voice within character, or if that's something that you just really naturally find through a character becoming part of your own fabric.
I definitely, I think it's a little bit of both. I wish I had more of that. Like, I am one of those people that you get in a room and their voice gets higher, and then you can't hear them at all. I literally annoy myself. It's horrible. So I wish I had control of it in my real life. But I've been fortunate to play really powerful women, and that does not serve, that does not tell their story. And so I think just coming from I'm a singer, so that was my first love and training and first experience of storytelling. And so I often, monologues in particular, have always felt like arias to me, like, the quiet moments, and it builds to something. And it's just always been the way I understood the topography. And I have to say, with Melly and Scandal, it was, there was so much shaming Fitz in the first, especially the first season, that it was a very instinctive thing. Like, when my dog is bad, I can't tell him with words, so I have to tell him with intent. And so it was a very instinctive thing that happened to shame Fitz like that, to really get in there like that. And it sort of unlocked something in me that I realized is a deficit in my own personal human character, and seems to be something I draw on. So, it won't always, though, because I'm not always going to play powerful women or humans.
Is it also very instinctive in terms of the way that they physically command a room with their presence as well? Because again, when you look at the way that Melly walked into a room and the way that Jessica walked into a room, they both walk in being like, this is my space and I'm here to take up a lot of room in this space as well. But they do it in very different ways, which you bring that obviously through your performance. So again, is that something that you just found very naturally, or is there a consciousness in thinking about their physical stature and the blocking and the way that they're going to walk differently?
I've never been one of the outside in actors. I'm definitely an inside out actor. So it's definitely like who they are, what they've been through, that kind of like, which brings the physicality for me from an instinctive place instead of a cerebral place. But I love those people who are like, I think this character has a limp, and then they make a whole character and it's mesmerizing. But I've never been able to work that way. But I also think I also just have to give credit to the fact that it's a collaborative medium, like there's so many clues in the script, behavioral, just gold nuggets about how they move or what they drink, or, when they, who they call, and how they phrase things. There's so many little things. And then you work with your wonderful wardrobe designer. And I know every actor in the world is going to tell you shoes make all the difference. And like, I am a human who lives in comfortable pants that have a drawstring around them and tennis shoes, because I just can't take heels anymore. I can't do it. So I am a completely different person when you put me in a skirt and a pair of stilettos, like a totally different. And sometimes, like with Melly, that wig, they put that wig on me and it was so uncomfortable. Melly was always in a bad mood because I was so uncomfortable. And I look at like women who do period dramas and like, horrible corsets and things. And that is a true fact of being a woman throughout the ages. These things are pantyhose. I mean, having to wear pantyhose. Do you know the levels of aggravation that adds to your day? I mean, there are just some real solid little nuggets that are gold for actors. And so I would be absolutely lying and remiss not to count those among the most prized parts of building any character.
And through developing Jessica as a character and playing her for almost 2 seasons now, what aspects of coming up with her as a character and manifesting her as a character are you the proudest of having brought to screen through your performances?
I just love the love in the family. I love it. And I love how specific the relationships are, like how Halston and I have found the relationship between Jessica and Ainsley is light years different than what Tom and I have developed. And, time spent with Michael, it's just, the specificity is lovely. And that's a factor of my actors, it really is. I love it. And I also haven't on this job at all been, nor was I in Scandal. It takes a lot for me to reach out to a writer and say, but how about this? Because that's not my gift. That's not my gift. My gift is interpreting, bringing to life, blah, 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 blah. So I can't say that I happily can't take credit for really content in that way. Although if you're doing your job right as an actor, like I said, you sow seeds. Like I remember in The Trail, which is first season of Scandal, like, I don't know, towards the end. I don't know, but it was a flashback to when we're campaigning. And there was there was a scene, we were in a bus, some content was happening. I don't even think I had a line, but like I had made it and I was still recurring and seeing my coach every time every time we did an episode, and just working as hard as I could just to make the most of the opportunity and hoping it would lead to something else. And I just made this decision to be filing my nails and listening, and had this look at the end, and it turned into a whole other they changed the next episode and wrote something different. And so I don't know, I just try to meet the moment with the grace and respect it deserves. And that's my way of collaborating.
Yeah. Well, I think you've absolutely done that. It's such a fantastic performance in the series and such a pleasure to watch. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mara. What a joy to talk with you. Really, really, thank you.